Welcome to the White Knight Theater. In the 5th episode of The Dark Enforcer, it was proven right again. With the help of an introduction, Luo Fei successfully obtained the key item left by Zheng Haoming, a digital camera. After reviewing the photos in the camera, Luo Fei, with his keen observational skills, realized the connection between the 58th deleted subject in the photos and the GTon Internet Cafe. At the subsequent case briefing, Han Hao signaled his secretary, Xiao Bai, to turn on the projector and display the crime scene photos on the large screen in front. The victim had 3 stab wounds, a puncture in the abdomen, a slash on the upper right arm, and a cut on the neck. The fatal wound was on the neck, which severed the carotid artery, causing death by excessive blood loss. According to the forensic expert's assessment, the time of death was between midnight and 2 a.m. As Han Hao explained, close-up images appeared on the screen. The onlookers were no strangers to such gory scenes, but this time, the victim was a colleague they had worked with for years. The blood seemed especially bright and chilling, striking a nerve. When the close-up of Zheng Haoming's head and face finally appeared, some people in the room had to turn away, unable to bear the sight. Zheng Haoming's eyes were closed, but his mouth was slightly open, as if a scream had been left unvoiced. A dreadful wound stretched across his neck, with a ruler beside it showing a length of 7 centimeters. Blood from the wound had pooled beneath the body, filling the camera's frame. Han Hao continued his explanation. Look here, judging from the wound, the murderer used a dagger or something similar. A kitchen knife was also found at the scene. According to the technician's investigation, the fingerprints on the knife belonged to the victim, so it was likely used by the victim for self-defense. Thus, we believe the victim had a fierce struggle with the attacker before being killed. There are also many other pieces of evidence to support this conclusion. Look at this photo. These are the knife marks on the living room table, and here, the marks on the decorative cabinet. The items inside the cabinet are scattered, indicating an impact, and there's a large amount of spattered blood here. It's clear that the victim was fatally struck in this area. The crowd listened in silence as Han Hao guided them through the scene of Zheng Haoming's struggle with the attacker, as if the events were unfolding before their eyes. The screen then switched to a close-up of the wooden floor. Han Hao seemed to perk up when he saw this photo. This photo was taken at the victim's feet. We can see some circular spots on the floor, which are likely caused by blood dripping from a height. However, since the victim was wearing long-sleeved pajamas, the wounds on his arm and abdomen would not have caused blood to drip. Also, the large neck wound would not have formed isolated drip stains. Therefore, we concluded that these bloodstains were likely left by the attacker. Go back to the photo of the kitchen knife. Yes, this one. Look, there are bloodstains on the edge of the knife. These 2 pieces of evidence corroborate each other. So, does that mean the attacker was injured? Could it be the attacker's blood? A small stir arose in the room, with people showing a hint of excitement. If the attacker was injured, not only would there be undeniable evidence like blood left at the scene, but it would also provide a distinct feature for investigation and capture. Han Hao was excited. His piercing gaze swept across the room, suppressing the murmurs. Then he picked up a report and waved it in his hand. Now I can confirm this. These are the latest test results. The victim's blood type is AB, while the bloodstains on the knife and the floor are type B. Without a doubt, that is the attacker's blood. Now, look at the photos of the kitchen. This is the kind of wooden lattice window found in old kitchens. Outside the window is the community's greenbelt. The window was open outward, and the bottom pane of glass was shattered. There are also knife marks on the windowsill. We concluded that the attacker climbed up to the 3rd floor along the downspout and the lower resident security windows, then broke the kitchen window glass and entered the house. During this process, the already sleeping victim heard the noise, got up to check, and encountered the attacker in the kitchen, leading to a struggle. The victim grabbed the kitchen knife to fight back, but unfortunately was killed in the living room. Captain Han, were there any footprints or fingerprints of the attacker found at the scene? No. The attacker likely wore gloves and shoe covers, showing a strong anti-investigation awareness. If the attacker knew to wear gloves and shoe covers, why didn't he clean up his own bloodstains? The person who asked the question seemed a bit disappointed. Usually, footprints can be used to estimate the suspect's height and weight, while fingerprints can be entered into the computer for data retrieval. If he had a criminal record, his identity could be easily found. The absence of these clues at the scene undoubtedly increases the difficulty of the investigation. Han Hao's expression suddenly became serious. Even so, we still have some clues. Now everyone note down the suspect's profile. He is likely a young or middle-aged man, with a slim build, a height between 164 and 167 centimeters, and a recent knife wound on his hand. Everyone in the room took out paper and pens to jot down Han Hao's words. One person, however, couldn't help but let out a soft "huh" at the end, showing great surprise. In the silent atmosphere, this sound was particularly noticeable. Everyone immediately turned their attention to him. He was a young man in his 20s, with a fair complexion and a scholarly appearance. Those who knew him recognized him as Han Hao's deputy, Yin Jian. Han Hao was puzzled by Yin Jian's surprise. Yin Jian, do you have a question? No question. It's just that the analysis this morning was so accurate. Who is that person? He is Luo Fei, the criminal police officer from out of town who was at the scene this morning. He said we should look for a man who is very thin, around 165 centimeters tall, and has an injured hand. What? How could that guy make such an accurate judgment? You see, although these characteristics of the suspect sound simple, they were derived from meticulous analysis by many technicians. Moreover, to climb up to the third floor silently and enter through the narrow kitchen window, the suspect is likely to be small and agile. It's not difficult to make such a general inference, but determining the specific height range is not easy. It seems that Luo Fei is not an ordinary person. Due to the fierce struggle between the two parties, there were many knife marks left on the wooden cabinets in the kitchen and living room. The attacker, wielding a sharp dagger, swung each knife with full force, so he must have positioned his body in the most powerful stance. Based on this principle, through comprehensive induction, it is possible to deduce the suspect height range from the height, angle, and trajectory of the knife marks. This involves a very detailed calculation process and the application of mathematical models. It is hard to imagine that someone could complete such work with just their eyes and brain power. There were bloodstains on the floor of the scene, which were formed by dripping from midair. There is a principle here. The higher the starting point of the drip, the larger the circular spot formed on the floor. Based on this principle, by conducting comparative experiments at the scene, it is possible to roughly estimate the height of the blood drop. The result was 70 to 90 centimeters from the ground. In this season, people wear relatively thick and tight clothing. The only possible wounds that could cause blood to drip are on the exposed hands or face. Combined with the previous inference, it is concluded that the suspect had an injured hand. All of these were figured out by Luo Fei in such a short time, which was simply incredible to Han Hao. However, his look of surprise only flashed across his face for a moment. He quickly covered. The identity and purpose of Luo Fei were unclear, and in this case, he himself was a key subject of investigation. Lin Jie, didn't I tell you to keep an eye on him? I assigned Jin Yufeng from the 2nd Squadron to handle this. I'll contact him now to see how things are going, Yin Jian said as he took out his phone and dialed the number. After several rings, someone finally answered. The Dark Enforcer, Episode 6, The Strange Letter. At the case briefing held within the Criminal Police Brigade of the A City Public Security Bureau, Han Hao reviewed and analyzed the many details and clues related to the murder of Zheng Haoming. The suspect's profile ultimately sketched out matched exactly with the one Luo Fei had previously deduced. This only deepened the doubts in Han Hao's mind. He immediately asked Yin Jian to call the surveillance officer monitoring Luo Fei. Hello, is this Jin? Oh my god, yes, Captain Han. Let me hand it over to you. Hello, this is Han Hao. Captain Han, I am sorry. This is Luo Fei. Luo Fei, why do you have Jin Yofeng's phone? Captain Han, I think there might be some misunderstanding between me and your officer. I was investigating something, and then I realized I was being followed. I tried to subdue him, and we ended up in a fight. This all just happened. He's currently unconscious, but don't worry, he'll wake up soon. When you called, I happened to find his ID on him. This was purely accidental, and I'm really sorry. Luo Fei's apologetic tone was sincere, but it was clearly not enough to dispel Han Hao's anger. He barely controlled his emotions to avoid an outburst. After taking several deep breaths, Han Hao accused Luo Fei with great dissatisfaction. Luo Fei, Captain Luo, this is not your turf. Don't you think your actions are just too much? Captain Han, I understand how you feel. My reaction was indeed too nervous just now. But if you knew how terrifying that hidden opponent is, you would understand me too. Oh, you've made some new discoveries? Yes, I hope you can listen to me this time. Alright, in half an hour, I'll be waiting for you in my office at the Criminal Police Brigade. Alright, I have some good news for you now. Your officer has already woken up. Captain, I'm useless. When Luo Fei arrived at Han Hao's office, Han Hao was already waiting for him as agreed over the phone. How's your progress? Officer Luo, I don't have the obligation to report to you, do I? Han Hao retorted sharply, and Luo Fei gave a wry smile, looking quite helpless. Seeing that the other party had softened, Han Hao's mood improved slightly. He felt he should say something, so he carefully began. We've already grasped the suspect's physical characteristics. We've set up checkpoints at all transportation hubs in the suburbs, and police forces at all levels are conducting special checks, focusing on those who have connections to the cases handled by Officer Zheng Haoming before his death. I understand your thinking. You believe this is a retaliatory murder targeting a public security officer, right? There were no signs of robbery at the scene. The attacker broke in with a knife, and the intention to kill was very clear. What else do you think it could be? Do you know why I'm here? Yes, that's exactly what I want to know. And what's your relationship with Officer Zheng Haoming? Take a look at this letter. Han Hao took the paper from Luo Fei and saw it was addressed to Academy number 8102. You should remember me. After the overture ended, it should have started normally. The time in between was indeed too long, but this day has finally come. Thinking of the magnificent chapter that is about to unfold, I can hardly suppress my excitement. Do you want to join the lovers? My old friend, I know you've been waiting for a long time. I can imagine your expression when you see this letter. You will tremble with excitement, won't you? Your blood is boiling, and boundless power is gathering in your body, just as I feel now. I can already smell your longing, your anger, and even your fear. Come quickly. I'm waiting for you here. I received this letter 2 days ago. It was sent from the city. 8102 was my student number when I was in the police academy. Yes, we know you were a student of the Provincial Police Academy's class of 1981, and your academic performance was outstanding. You were hailed as the best student in the history of the police academy. However, you made a mistake before graduation and were only assigned to Longzhou, a second-tier city, to work as a regular police officer in a suburban police station. But you were promoted quickly, becoming the station chief in 8 years, and then transferred to the city's criminal police brigade. We have investigated your resume thoroughly. But what's the point of mentioning this now? Error, mistake, perhaps failure is a more accurate term, a painful failure. Whether it's an error or a failure, it's all in the past. You don't need to dwell on it. It's not over yet. He's still in this city. Luo Fei's eyes blazed with anger, while his tone was as cold as ice. Beidou, Han Hao, shocked, suddenly realized something and looked at the letter again. Yes, it was this letter. Who wrote this? And what does it have to do with the murder of Officer Zheng Haoming? Captain Han, when did you join the City Criminal Police Brigade? 10 years ago, after graduating with a master's degree. So you don't know anything. After I left the scene this morning, I went to GT on Internet Cafe based on the clues from Officer Zheng Haoming's camera. At 3:47 p.m. the day before yesterday, Officer Zheng secretly took photos of a young man who was online in the cafe. He took several photos. I asked the manager to check the young man's online record from that day, and I found this webpage. Luo Fei seemed to have regained his characteristic calmness and meticulousness. As he spoke, he handed over a photocopy of the webpage. Han Hao took the paper, He wasn't very familiar with the internet, but he quickly realized it was a post on some forum. The account that posted it was called Eumenides, the name of the avenging goddess in Western mythology. The title of the post was 4 bold black characters, Death Penalty Collection. The Dark Enforcer, Episode 7, Rebuilding the Task Force. In Han Hao's mind, although Luo Fei's actions had repeatedly offended him, the mysterious letter Luo Fei brought and his accurate prediction of the suspect's physical characteristics deepened Han Hao's doubts about Luo Fei's identity. Eumenides, the avenging goddess. What did this account name mean? Who was using the post titled Death Penalty Collection? And what was its purpose? All of this left Han Hao utterly perplexed. Han Hao carefully examined the webpage material Luo Fei handed over. The 4 bold black characters Death Penalty Collection were strikingly prominent. Below the title it read, "Every time I open my eyes, I see that there are still many filthy souls in this world. The law is a tool to purify the world, but its power is always too limited. Some people do bad things that are not governed by the law. Or sometimes, people do bad things, but the law cannot find evidence to convict them. There are also times when those who do bad things have various kinds of capital that allow them to rise above the law. The law is imperfect. Society needs punishments beyond the law, and I am the executor of this punishment. My punishment has only one rule, the most direct one, the death penalty. A group of villains will be cleaned up by me, but their list is not yet fully determined, because you have the opportunity to add a name to this list. Do you want someone to die? You think he doesn't deserve to live in this world, but you can't punish him. Justice seems so powerless in front of him. Then please write down his name. Tell me what he has done, and I will judge him. You have 2 weeks, and then I will announce the final execution list." After reading the post, Han Hao looked at Luo Fei doubtfully. Isn't this just a prank? There are many such messy things on the internet. Collaborative drama. This is a terrible sin. Officer Zheng died because of this, but he was not the first victim. 18 years ago, this had already happened once. What happened 18 years ago? You still can't say. This is confidential. What do you mean confidential? 18 years ago, a case occurred in this city. Because of the extremely heinous nature of the case, in order to control its impact, it was classified as a top-secret case, and all the investigation work was carried out secretly by a special task force. That's all I can say for now. Since it's a top secret, how do you know I was also involved in that case? Don't you understand? It was that case that made me fall into the abyss back then, and the task force officer who questioned me after the incident was Officer Zheng Haoming. So that's how it is. The top secret case from 18 years ago remains unsolved. Teacher Zheng was a member of the task force back then, and 18 years later, he discovered new clues and was then murdered. Subsequently, the person involved in that case, Luo Fei, received a mysterious letter and returned to city. Han Hao finally pieced together some of the causes and effects of matter. The murder of Zheng Haoming indicated that evil was pulling down a new curtain. But what exactly was this case about? Han Hao hoped to get more answers from Luo Fei. Since you can't tell me the details, why did you come to me in the first place? I hope you immediately submit a report to the higher authorities, requesting the declassification of the case files from that year and the re-establishment of the task force. At 4 p.m. on October 21st, Han Hao's face was gloomy, his hands pressed on the table in the Criminal Police Brigade's conference center, with a pile of thick files beneath them. 2 hours earlier, he had declassified these case files that had been sealed for 18 years. After understanding that past, he already knew he was facing a terrifying and ambitious opponent. Fortunately, Han Hao was not alone. 18 years later, the task force had been re-established. Luo Fei sat opposite him, his gaze having lingered on that pile of files for a long time. His eyes were scattered, and his thoughts had clearly drifted to another time and space. Those files might just be some words, some pictures and records of events to others, but for Luo Fei, the feeling was completely different. He had already immersed himself in scenes that were so vividly real. Although it had been many years, the sounds Images and even all the breaths in those scenes were so clear and distinguishable. Of course, all the emotions associated with those scenes had not diminished at all. Sadness, frustration, desolation, anger, and even fear. Luo Fei knew he would never forget it. And the only way to find relief was to find that detestable and terrifying person and put an end to it once and for all. Yin Jian sat beside Han Hao, his eyes curiously observing Luo Fei, seemingly very interested in what Luo Fei was thinking. Although they had only met once, this abruptly appearing man seemed to carry a mysterious aura, which undoubtedly had a great appeal to Yin Jian. Who exactly was this Officer Luo? What was the top secret case from 18 years ago? Alas, it was another young man in the room had a completely different demeanor from Yin Jian. This young man, who looked to be in his early 20s, seemed even younger than Yin Jian. He wore glasses, had a thin physique, and propped his head up with his left hand. Although he was also dressed in a police uniform, his posture was far from the solemn and dignified demeanor expected. At that moment, he was idly twirling a pen in his right hand, seemingly uninterested in the people and events around him, only occasionally lifting his head to glance around with an extremely quick and lively look. Next to the young man was a dark and sturdy man who was in his early 30s. His sitting posture was imposing, with his back straight and exuding an air of great efficiency and strength. The sturdy man glanced at his watch. "Captain Han, it's time. Let's begin. We're still waiting for one more person. Let's wait another 3 minutes. Discipline should be the first priority in such an important occasion. If we can't coordinate internally, how can we fight against the opponent? Wait another 3 minutes. You don't need to wait because I've already been here." Accompanying this voice, a figure walked into the conference room, and all eyes were immediately drawn to this person. Even Luo Fei lifted his head from his reverie, a flicker of surprise flashing in his eyes. He hadn't expected that in the conference room of the Criminal Police Brigade, a place filled with masculine toughness and dignity, there would actually be a woman. Undoubtedly, she was a typical Southern beauty. She had a slender figure, a pretty face, large eyes, and a delicate nose and mouth. Her soft, smooth, and lustrous black hair contrasted sharply with her fair skin. It was hard to determine her exact age from her appearance because her cheeks were flushed with youthful radiance. However, her eyebrows and eyes exuded a kind of poise and sharpness that only a mature woman could possess. Even Han Hao, the convener of the meeting, seemed somewhat surprised at this moment. "Are you Professor Mu?" "Yes, I am Mu Jianyun, a lecturer in the criminal psychology department at the Provincial Police Academy. Since you've been here for a while, why didn't you come in earlier?" Xiong Yuan's question echoed the doubts of everyone present. They all looked at the woman who had just walked in with a mix of astonishment and curiosity. At this moment, Han Hao's face wore a barely perceptible smile. When the leader from the provincial department had recommended this criminal psychology expert to him, he had not expected that the person would be such an elegant and graceful woman. However, Han Hao did not doubt Mu Jianyun's capabilities because of this. He knew that being recommended by the provincial department was not a privilege that just anyone could enjoy. Moreover, from another perspective, women, with their delicate and perceptive natures, often have an advantage over men in psychological research.